Now, I mentioned that Calvin was, by his own admission, shy and awkward. You probably would have called him an introvert's introvert. And yet he established many deep friendships. You see this in his letters. He wrote one letter, so far as we know, to Martin Luther, a year before Luther died, 1545. So what's that? Calvin is mid-30s, Luther's about to die. It's a very deferential letter. He calls Luther the very excellent pastor, my much respected father, my most renowned sir, most distinguished minister, my ever honored father. Calvin was passing it on to Melanchthon, his friend and Luther's friend, and he wanted Luther to read a couple of tracts. And you can read it, Calvin's like, I know you're so busy, and you could maybe even have one of your students read it and give you the summary of it. Calvin, in the background, is pretty frustrated with Luther, that he thinks Luther is an absolute hothead and he is causing division among the Reformed efforts when there should be unity. And he wants Luther, especially with the sacraments and worship, to read some of the things he's written. One, Calvin thinks he's more right than Luther. And two, just let's try to bring this together. Luther never read the letter. Melanchthon wrote, much to Calvin's frustration. Melanchthon writes back and basically says, that wouldn't have gone well. Luther's very suspicious. He doesn't take that kind of criticism well. It would have made things worse, and so I never even sent him the letter. Calvin is very frustrated. He writes back to Melanchthon, your Pericles, that's what he's calling Luther, your Pericles allows himself to be carried beyond all due bounds with his love of thunder. We all of us acknowledge that we are much indebted to him. And Calvin goes on and he says, I am perfectly fine that he should have the chief place among us. He was willing to say, yes, Luther's the man. We're all in debt to him. We even can all submit ourselves to Luther. But then he says, you will say his disposition is vehement and his impetuosity ungovernable. But he tells Melanchthon, you're making it worse by just, we would say, you're an enabler. You're just tiptoeing around Luther and you won't even give him my letter, and his thunder has gotten out of control.